Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Well, yesterday was a momentous day, and of course, it begs questions that need to be answered. But there's a lot of ground to cover, some of which is rather more trivial than others. So, without further ado, I will plunge in with the current and topical, then we're going to go to the more entertaining and trivial, and then we're going to end up with something rather more momentous. So, those who don't want moment, please skip those bits. Okay? Well, first of all, with any presidential inauguration, to those of you who don't know, the British Prime Minister or the British Head of State never attends. It's the outgoing British Ambassador to Washington, Karen Pierce, who attended the inauguration on behalf of the United Kingdom government as its sole representative. Then, of course, there was all sorts of talk that Keir Starmer wouldn't be asked, David Lammy, if he went, would be snubbed. They were never, ever in the line of fire for an invitation, much less to attend. So I want to put that little bit of speculation to bed. Of course, a lot of Brits who have been supportive of the more conservative policies did show up. Nigel Farage, chief of whom? There was Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, so two former British Prime Ministers. The former Shadow Secretary, Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary, Priti Patel, and Suella Braverman, who is what's his name? Rishi Sunak's sworn enemy. They were all there. And now I am going to plunge in with what my bongo drums have been messaging me, because I said I would look into the Vanity Fair article and get back to you once I had feedback. And I now have some feedback. I'm going to interweave the feedback with my observations, if I may, because to me, the most telling of all of the points was the inclusion of the fact that Vanity Fair was told that Meghan Markle sent a representative to a particular publisher to canvass the possibility of a post-Harry divorce book. Now, that's pretty weighty. And believe me, there is no way that Vanity Fair would have included that information if A, they hadn't been told it and accepted it as factual, notwithstanding the fact that the Sussexes are trying to say, no, that could never happen. And publishers would approach her. Well, publishers aren't going to approach her, Harry and Meghan, you idiots, with, what can we set up a deal for when you're divorced while you're not divorced? I mean, but of course they had to do something, so they deny in the most stupid way possible. Well, I said on X, the very first person to say it incidentally, but we're going to get to that in a little while, because the Daily Mail has been very mischievous and tried to make out that someone else, well, first of all, that what I said is now their idea, and that what I originally said in my original book, Meghan and Harry, the real story, was they've credited it to Valentine Lowe, whose book came out 2 years after mine. But we'll get to that in a second. I said that my information was that it was payback time, that in 2017, they gave Meghan the cover of Vanity Fair. They bigged her up in the most wonderful way, knowing that they would be currying favour with the royal family, and ever hopeful, doubtless, that ultimately they get Catherine to be on their cover. But they were perfectly happy to have Meghan, and they had a very interesting headline called Wild About the Boy, Wild About Harry, or I can't remember exactly what it was now. I think she's wild about Harry or something like that. I don't remember exactly what and it's amazing I don't remember it, because it's only yesterday or day before yesterday that I did my Twitter thing. So I should remember it. Anyway, I don't. I'm sorry. My retention for trivia is very limited. But Wild About Harry, I think it was. Anyway, whatever. And she said it was racist. And she berated them. And she got her Sunshine Sachs representative, but she abused her evidently and got her to abuse them. That's what I was told. How true it is, one needs to say for legal reasons, one has to put that in for self-protection, if nothing else. But anyway, they certainly knew that she was a very unhappy, and I included that in my 2020 book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. And I was told this, and I did it on Twitter. And I can actually, no, I'll wait. I won't do it now. They've never forgiven her, evidently. Meghan should understand that newspapers and magazines have a very long memory. They're amongst the most spiteful, vengeful creatures on earth. Now, I know this to be a fact, because the British newspapers have never forgiven me for suing them. And every single one that I sued 50 years ago still goes out of their way to screw me when they can. So she should have understood. But then again, Meghan, for all her claims to have been a star, she wasn't a star, and she really didn't know how publicity works. And so she was very much a neophyte. But they've never forgiven her. That's why Meghan has never been to a Vanity Fair party, never been asked to the Met Gala. No. Meghan, there's a reason, and that's the reason. Now that I've said it, let's wait and see when the Daily Mail comes up with it and says that Valentine Lowe said it or someone else. Because really, their behaviour is so pathetic, it's actually laughable. The article, I have been told, is putting a huge amount of strain on their relationship. But Meghan has been playing the victim card, and I married you so much, and how can you? And why are you so concerned about yourself? Look at what you've caused them to do to me. I never had any of this until I married you. No, I was a star of Suits. And look at it now. Everybody's against me. One tail left eye, and let me collapse onto the ground. Harry's evidently torn in two separate directions. All I can say is, I hope he has help in soothing them. At least one of the two directions. But she's been playing the victim card. She needs H's protection at the very moment that he's caused it all. I gather Harry has been extremely humiliated and is furious at his portrayal as a deadbeat, basically leech submissive who would prefer to have his wife support him and just bum around all day. The fact it might be true, Harry, should not be a preventative to being upset. Absolutely not. You are entitled to be upset. Harry, of course, considers himself an alpha male and a protector. And the one thing the article did get right is that Harry and Meghan have a very, very potent relationship. Of course, the mere fact that they went to the lengths they did in Vanity Fair to point out how much they're still in love and how hot they are for each other shows that, take that one with a pinch of salt. But what really has upset her especially is what I have said from in my first book about the Oedipal nature of their relationship. Of course, Vanity Fair was then careful, having mentioned Oedipal, to make it reparenting, and they're really in love with each other, and they're hot for each other. Yes, Oedipus was really hot for Jocasta, and Meghan's Jocasta. Oh, well, sorry. I'm sorry, actually. I'm Diana Mac too. I am, and I channel Diana. Oh, she just comes to me, and she comes to me, and she comes to me. And I just tell H, your mom's not very pleased with you because you didn't get me that diamond ring that I wanted. Your mom loved jewelry too. Well, evidently, that struck very close to the bone. What has also struck close to the bone, and he's embarrassed by, I gather, and she is enraged by, is the portrayal of her as a dominatrix and him as a submissive. And in fact, if you read between the lines in the article, they are basically saying she's the man in the relationship and he's the woman, which doesn't go down well with somebody who considers himself to be an alpha male who's protecting the little woman, even though he knows as well as everybody else that little woman tells him, H, jump! And he says, hi, unless he every now and then gets backbone, in which case he rebels. I gather also that he is highly embarrassed that his sociopath idea came out the way it did. I mean, it's been alluded to in the past, but they rarely hit the nail on the head. I mean, can you imagine anybody being dumb enough to think that any reputable or even crazy television station or streaming service could pitch an idea to the president of Russia? The Duke of Sussex wants to do a show on sociopaths and he thinks you're one and he'd like to interview you because he is really perplexed as to how he didn't come out as one, notwithstanding the fact that his mother was effectively murdered. Well, his mother wasn't murdered, and that has caused no end of consternation elsewhere, I don't mind telling you, because nobody murdered his mother. She, if anything, is the one who murdered herself by failing to use a seatbelt and by tipping off the paparazzi that she and Dodi would have then instructed Henri Paul, who died as well. Let's not forget that. So there was collateral damage, so to speak, while she was playing the, oh, look how hunted I am. I'm Diana, not the huntress. I'm Diana, the hunted. She was playing it. Dodi was so impressed. I mean, talk about using your mother. I mean, just unbelievable. And of course, let's not forget the bullying of the staff. Oh. Well, she is the best employer you've ever seen. She sends care packages to people when they're not feeling well. After, of course, she's lambasted them and they can't face seeing her. She sends them care packages and sweet little calligraphically, decorously pretentious notes. Revenge is a dish best served cold. And we now come on to the other part of this, the other dimension of this, I should say. Jace says, Lady C, can you please explain to me how the Mail had the gall to cull your ex-post yesterday and today and run a story under your name with the headline, I truly pity the royal family. Lady Colin Campbell claims sensational Vanity Fair article on Meghan Markle vindicates her as she laments that her warnings were ignored. By Melody Fletcher. Then today they steal the main point of your post and give credit for it to Valentine Lowe under the headline. The real reason Vanity Fair turned on Meghan and Harry, couple's relationship with magazine may have soured when Duchess complained about racist headline on her 2017 cover story. Well, I'm actually going to read out my post because it really is very entertaining, and then I'm going to answer the question. Because to me, it is truly entertaining and very illuminating and slightly annoying as well, it has to be said. How frank all these publications are in playing their stupid games. Because, yes, I will admit, I do not make it easier for myself because I call out these frauds and fraudsters and liars and cheats and con artists for exactly what they are. And I suppose, therefore, by not rolling over and allowing them to ravish me, I do not, you could say, I actually, well, not exactly beg for it, because they could actually be honourable. I mean, I don't accuse any of them of anything that's not just and fair, and I don't take the low road, and I do not, if I always give credit where it's due, if I can, and I certainly don't go out of my way to cheat people of their accomplishments the way they all do. But anyway, so let me read out what I said. It is said that revenge is the dish best served cold. I am told that Vanity Fair has patiently waited for 7.5 years to stick it to Meghan Markle, who, in 2017, accused them of racism in the form of their headline, Wild About Harry, after they put her on their front page and gave her a degree of credibility and kudos which she actually lacked and to which she was not entitled. This helped her to make it up the aisle with Prince Harry. And since then, Vanity Fair has appeared to be one of the most faithful keepers of her flame. But apparently, all is not quite what it appears to have been. They've, that is Vanity Fair, and this is a quotation, they've never forgiven her or forgotten what she did. They were furious about it, and they've remained furious about it since. While she and Harry have picked people like Dan Wooten and Piers Morgan off their perches and tried to do so less successfully with you, Vanity Fair have bided their time. I'm told they're jubilant at how they've plunged the knife in. End of quotes. Now, I continue the rest of what I said, because you'll see how completely unscrupulous the Mail is. There's more to this aspect than I have space for here, but in the fullness of time, all will emerge. It also shows how inept an analyst of human nature Meghan is. She rarely seems to think she can use, misuse, exploit, and knock people down, stepping on them without fear of the consequences, as she stomps ever higher upwards on the back of their contributions to fulfill her ambitions for fame and fortune. All the while, though, she fails to understand that people have longer memories than she does, and they'll bide their time until they're presented with the perfect opportunity to exact justice and unmask the creature for the mutant that she is. Congratulations, Vanity Fair. You have, on the face of it, engaged in a fair, balanced, and comprehensive examination of the 5 years since Megxit. You have done what my American publishers insisted I do with the original 2020 version of my book, Meghan and Harry, the Real Story, namely bend over backwards to come up with any and everything positive one could include about the subject, no matter how obtuse or preposterous it was, thereby providing evidence of a balance that actually tilts the work in undeserved favour of the subject. Those of us in the know have found some of your more positive comments about the couple and the state of their relationship, as well as their personal attributes, both funny and laughable. Nevertheless, including those comments does preserve you against accusations of bias, as you have paid the ingrate back for the unwarranted accusations she made against you in 2017. Thanks for the proof that patience is indeed a virtue, that revenge is a dish best served cold, and for providing us with the lesson that even standard bearers such as yourselves will abandon propaganda and exact revenge for the wrongs done to you. once the situation becomes apparent that there is no further advantage to be gained from continuing to purvey the fiction that black is white, pink is green, and that Meghan Markle is anything but the piece of work you've known she was for the last 7.5 years. You are about to discover that the truth does set you free. So that's what I wrote. Well, what does the Mail do? It says that it's the head, and it was all over the papers. That so it's not it's that I claim that Meghan Markle vindicates me and my warnings were ignored, as if that's the point of the story. Then, in yesterday's paper, having used my story for 2 days, they managed to get somebody, I don't even have his or her name, comes up with the real reason Vanity Fair turned on Meghan and Harry. Couple's relationship with magazine may have soured when Duchess complained about a racist headline on her 2017 cover. And they say that Valentine Lowe is the one who said it 2 years after I said it. So they've given credit to Valentine Lowe for something I did. It's really interesting to me, and I say this with no great pleasure, how totally brazen and unscrupulous and, quite frankly, plain plumb stupid many of the newspapers and their reporters are, because they don't like me. They don't like me. They will bend over backwards to give credit that's due to me to anybody else but me. Well, why? Because I think that was the question, wasn't it? Can I please explain how they have the goal? Well, they have the goal because they can and because they do. But why do they do it? Well, I've never been popular in press circles. Since 1975, when I sued all of them. Prior to that, there was not one story that was ever written about me that wasn't prefixed with beautiful, the beautiful Lady Colin Campbell, the beautiful George Ciardi, blah, blah, blah. Thereafter, never done. Because I had the unmitigated gall to sue them for telling lies about me. And the Mail, I have had to sue repeatedly, and I have had to call them to order repeatedly, to such an extent that I know Liz Hartley, their legal manager, and she knows me only too well. Why am I so loathed? Well, I'll tell you my interpretation of it, aside from the fact that I had the gall to sue them, and they never forget. And Meghan, of course, didn't understand that when she was being given a front page story that she didn't deserve, on the back of having been on her back, that's why she was given the front page story, that when she accused them of racism, they were going to have payback time one of these days. She never realized it. And it's taken 7.5 years, but it's happened. And I don't blame them. I certainly blame them for lying about me and not giving credit where it's due, because I think that you should give people their due, but I don't blame them for paying her back, because the fact of the matter is, she's the one who kicked sand in their face. And I could go into all the reasons why the press don't like me. I'm not sure you'd be that interested. So unless you'd be interested, I'll give it a miss. Okay? And if you're interested, you can ask me and I will answer the question some other time. But to those of you who wouldn't be interested or those of you who aren't interested, I don't want to burden you. But it's actually quite complex, and it's actually very educative of not only human nature, but the category of low breed that by and large is employed in journalism nowadays. Circles and main Omaha. No, sorry. Circles grandma in Omaha. Sorry. When it's all together in one word, it's really difficult to read. Commenting for the algo. I don't know if you keep track of American media, but Meghan is being absolutely savaged in story after story after story. The way the media here tends to work, when they smell blood in the water, they start digging out and airing all their old stories that they were sitting on to remind people how relevant the media still is. Interesting who the target is. They must believe her downfall is coming. They are contributing to her downfall. They know her downfall is coming. And as I've said all along, they are all cowards, they are gutless, they are bullies, and the only reason why they are moving into high gear now isn't because of justice, and it isn't because of the fact that Meghan deserves what she's getting, although she does. It's that it's safe for them to do so. It is because they move as a pack. They are like an animal pack, and they move as pack animals do. Grunt, grunt, grunt. Savage, savage, savage. Very few of them have the courage or the integrity to actually take a considered and that responds accurately to whatever is taking place. That would require thought, which most of them aren't capable of doing, and that would require integrity, which most of them don't have, and that would require character, which they're too busy dissipating in bars or elsewhere as they earn their living and follow the party line. So I think her downfall isn't coming. It has arrived. You're witnessing it. I've been saying for some time now that last year was going to see Meghan's reckoning, and it's been happening before people's eyes. I don't know why people think maybe she'll escape. Who knows? Maybe she'll be faster-footed than the brickbats that are being hurled at her, all of which are justified. But other stuff is coming down the line. It's just a matter of things being done legally and safely. And since we are dealing with the media, who are pack animals, they have to function en bloc. And it's had to wait. The reckoning has had to wait for them to realize it's safe. And also, they had to understand that they'd milked the cow and there was no milk left. So now it's safe to get rid of the cow. So there's all of that to consider as well. But yes, they do believe her downfall is coming. And if you think this is bad, wait. There's a plenty worse coming. Let me leave it at that for the moment. NS25 says, Dear Lady C, I personally think that you or the YouTubers or the Palace should lift the lid on their secrets before Megsy does a bombshell interview discussing the surrogacy and divorce from Harry. The whole world will be listening as she is the king's daughter-in-law. I imagine she would be paid a lot as well by anybody. Please beat her to it. Well, I'm sorry, I'm in no race with Meghan Markle or anybody else. I move at my own pace, but I certainly hear what you're saying. And I certainly move within correct parameters and with respect for certain practices and protocols. And I think there's very little doubt as to where I stand on most issues where Meghan and Harry are concerned. So, however, unlike a lot of the media, I may not be gutless, but like the media, I'm attached to my money and I intend to keep the attachment sound and solid. So, unless somebody in the Santa Barbara and the London hospitals are going to provide me with incontrovertible proof, which of course would ruin their careers and possibly their lives, so it's not going to happen, I am afraid I need to tread with caution. So, but you're absolutely right. Meghan has flown the kite already about post-divorce. Wait for it. I was forced to do this. I was forced. Yes, I was forced. I was forced. Oh, forced. I'm going to console myself. I think I need some stuffing to take the thoughts edge off. Yes, I mean, yes. Do you think I'm comfortable enough? Maybe a little bit extra. Yes, maybe a little bit extra. Maybe I just... But you're not going to be able to see it, so I'd save myself the trouble of getting down on my knees. Yes. Yank Abroad says, Lady C, what do you make of Biden pardoning Dr. Fauci? Well, President Biden didn't only pardon Dr. Fauci, he pardoned 37 of the 40 inmates in federal prison who are on death row, some of whom committed awful crimes. Of course, I don't think President Biden will be at all concerned as to how the families of the victims feel. Because although President Biden had a great tragedy in the loss of his first wife and daughter, that was an accident. President Biden doesn't know what it's like to actually have loved ones killed. I know what it's like. I've had more than one. I'm not unique, and I'm not vengeful. However, did President Biden consult one of the victims' families? I'm pretty sure he didn't. Not only did President Biden pardon Dr. Fauci, which I have to say is very interesting, because I personally would have liked to see Dr. Fauci in the dock, because there is little doubt in my mind that Dr. Fauci has used in the most catastrophic way possible the escape from the virus in Wuhan that he was helping to fund. And I have said it all along that had Trump and Johnson been allowed to do what they wanted, which was to not shut down the world, things would have been completely different. But it was obvious to me, and as it has been to many people, that Dr. Fauci understood what an opportunity it was to get rid of President Trump the first time around, because he was going to be a shoo-in to be re-elected had the economy continued to perform at the rate it had been performing under his ministrations, and had people continued to be aware of the fact that he was one of the few presidents of either political party in the 20th and 21st century in the United States who was not pro-war, pro any war, as long as it makes money for certain people in certain segments of the society. And it would have been really interesting to see him in the dock. Personally, I think he should have been in the dock. I think the suffering that he caused worldwide and the damage that he caused worldwide and assisted in causing it, it wasn't him alone. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is what happened. According to a Dutch MP who said a few weeks ago in Parliament in the Netherlands, there was a directive given via NATO that all the NATO countries were to be shut down. That's why Sweden wasn't shut down. It wasn't NATO. So, but who else did Biden pardon? Well, Liz Cheney. I mean, General Mark Milley, Liz Cheney. Adam Kinzinger. The justification being that the Trump presidency might have them charged. But excuse me, I must be awfully dumb, but I seem to recall that the Biden administration was saying that the justice system in the United States of America is apolitical, and therefore all that it did against President Trump legally had nothing to do with politics. But all of a sudden, Biden has reversed his stand completely and said, well, actually, I don't trust the justice system. So he trusted it when he was going after Trump and others who were of a different political persuasion. But he doesn't trust it to go after, to be fair with his cohorts, and also he pardoned his two brothers, James and Francis, and Sarah, the wife of James Biden, Biden's sister Valerie, and her husband John, because of influence peddling. I mean, if they're innocent, why did they need to be pardoned? Of course, he pardoned Hunter, who everybody knows is guilty as sin. Well, everybody now knows Hunter is guilty as sin. But I don't know why he didn't simply just issue a blanket pardon. Anybody who committed a crime, who was of my political persuasion during my term of the presidency, I pardon. Well, he could have just done a blanket pardon, but of course, he was slightly more specific than that. I have grave concerns about it, but I understand why he did it. I understand why he did it because I understand that his administration weaponized the legal system, and he, understanding how it works, was quite determined, and this is to his credit, determined to make sure that those who were loyal supporters of his do not suffer the consequences that he and the architects of the weaponization sought to unleash on their political opponents. Now, I've got very close relations of mine who are Democrats, who loathe Trump, who absolutely liked Biden. So I'm not saying this because I'm particularly pro-Trump and or pro-Republican and anti-Democrat. I'm certainly not anti-Democrat. I'm certainly not anti the Democratic Party as it was represented by John F. Kennedy. Let me put it that way. I think it's astonishing, absolutely astonishing that he has done it. I think it shows that he has no faith in the judicial system, but he wanted all of us to have faith in the very system that he has now revealed he has no faith in, when that system was being used against his political opponents. This is really deeply disturbing. This is deeply, deeply disturbing. This is such an abuse of Democrats, the democratic system. People are supposed to be able to believe justly in justice. And justice not only must be served, it must seem to be served. I think this has undermined on a substantial level. Having said that, what I think it has also done is it has opened the door for, at the end of President Trump's presidency, for him to pardon everybody who he thinks the Democrats might go after, should they get in next. Very bad precedent. Very bad precedent. But we know who we can hold responsible for it, because Biden has pardoned everybody but the kitchen sink. And I say this as a foreigner who has no skin in the American game. And maybe I know loads of Democrats will have a totally different idea and will feel that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm speaking about the principle. And I do know what I'm speaking about, because the principle that I'm speaking about is sound. Whether its application is justified or not is something else again. I leave that up to Americans to decide. But I will say, I have been saying since 1973, April or May 1973, when I was in Sarah Spencer Churchill's kitchen listening to the little television and the Watergate hearings, I said at the time, and it turns out I was absolutely right, that was the beginning of the end of true democracy in the United States of America, a proper governance. And please, those of you who want to tell me America is not a democracy and it is a representative republic, blah, 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 it's also a democracy. Okay, it's simply a Republican democracy. Okay, so please, I'm not using American terms. I'm using, as somebody who's a Briton, I'm using international terms that are used to speak the English language, and not the American version of it, but the international version of it. Okay, so because I know people are very het up in the United States and eager to score points. Well, I'm not trying to score any points. I've been asked a question and I'm making an answer. And now I'm going to end with something even more serious, which is yesterday we have had here Sir Keir Starmer has manipulated the legal system and tried to, well, let me just say let me put it in Nigel Farage's words, because the Reform leader has lashed out at Sir Keir Starmer and the police, quite rightly saying that the public were, quote unquote, denied the truth about Axel Rudakubana's motives and background, who took it upon himself to go into a dance class and eternally dispatch 3 young white girls who were in that dance class, a Taylor Swift dance class. And it turns out that he has had to plead guilty. It also turns out that the authorities were aware of his terroristic tendencies. 3 times he had been flagged up and reported, including, if I'm not mistaken, once by his father. Keir Starmer tried to not only deny the public the right to know the identity and the characteristics of somebody who had committed a lethal terrorist act 3 times over, but he deliberately withheld the news from the public. People aren't stupid. I know the Keir Starmers of this world think that the average person is stupid. What Nixon called the silent majority are stupid. Well, I've always said I have a lot more faith in the average person's intelligence than the intelligentsia does. And Keir Starmer, because it went against Keir Starmer's political ideals, that this was somebody whose racial identity and religion would actually cause consternation and beg questions as to Keir Starmer's application of the law and policies surrounding it. He suppressed the information, and I knew the identity of the person. I was told the identity of the person by Dan Wooten, who knew very early on. Nigel Farage knew very early on. An awful lot of people in the know, so to speak, knew very early on. But Keir Starmer starved the public of their right to know, thereby, in my view, precipitating the Southport riots. Because where there is a vacuum, mass will move into it. It's a law of physics. And people knew that it was that the guilty party was not traditionally or ethnically British, let me put it that way, in terms of the Anglo-Saxon heritage, and prior to that, the Pict heritage, etc., and the ancient Britons heritage of Britain. I need to be careful how I put these things because this is YouTube. But Keir Starmer knew, and people knew as well, because if the authorities couldn't simply come out and say, we identify the culprit as blah, 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 and provide the details, there was a reason why it was being covered up. And Keir Starmer then, in my opinion, triggered those riots and then proceeded to use them when he'd only been in power a week or two, proceeded to use them to dismiss every single person who was justly protesting as a right-wing, whatever he called them, right-wing something. I've forgotten now. But he made out that they were crazy right-wingers, and they weren't. And he also made out that they were, worse than the professional category of criminal that is a professional criminal that he released to make space for people like Lucy Connolly, who put up a post for a few minutes and has ended up in prison for 2.5 years, even though she took the post down very quickly. And she was not inciting anyone to violence. She was simply using figures of speech. I think the whole thing was absolutely astonishing. Well, the young man has pleaded guilty. Let us see when he's sentenced on Thursday whether he is going to be treated as the hate-filled terrorist that he actually is. Because Tommy Robinson, somebody who I have no brief for, nevertheless, I do think, why is he in prison as in solitary confinement? Is this guy going to be put in prison in solitary confinement? I personally, as a taxpayer, resent having to spend my hard-earned money in keeping somebody like that in any way, shape or form, in anything but, quite frankly, being dispatched. I have to say, this is one of the cases where if somebody is incontrovertibly guilty and they have committed a heinous crime, they should pay the ultimate price. That's my take on it. And I say that as someone who, at the age of 14, wanted to write to the Governor General of Jamaica so to spare Clifton Eccleston, who was my grandfather's murderer, of the ultimate sentence. And my grandmother talked me out of it. She said, you can't do that. She said, if the newspapers find out about it, it will cause an awful hue and cry. She said, you cannot do that. You must let the law take its course. So, we certainly are living in very interesting times. And on that note, I'll say, hopefully this hasn't been too heavy, and hopefully you will keep the questions and comments coming in, maybe in a slightly lighter vein. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. Take good care. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and bye-bye.